Hey, how are you going, everyone? Sorry about last week. I didn't upload a video. I had the intention to upload this video, and then I just ran out of time. I do have another one for this week that I'm working on, but I wanted to drop this in the meantime. Me and Zach got into a really interesting conversation that he was very eager to have on the stream before last. We stream every Wednesday at 9:30 to we run out of questions basically on Wednesdays, and I just wanted to include it as a separate upload based on talking about quarterbacks and how the changing landscape of who is a good and a bad quarterback in the NFL level is affecting Dynasty in several different directions right now. Anyway, I thought it was a really important conversation, especially for Superflex Dynasty. So I wanted to upload it separately. You can follow Zach at TacitAssassin13 on Twitter and Threads and anywhere else there's an at, and me at Pahowdy, of course. Like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you think about the changing quarterback landscapes. I think it's a really interesting area of discussion right now. Yeah, let's go. Love you all. Rank Goff, Stafford, Fields, rest of year. Oh, we include Fields this time. I see you, Ricky. Thank you. Fields is a really tough rank for me. I want to sell in Dynasty for what it's worth, which is a lot. Again, there are better and worse sell weeks, but after the last 2 weeks, I think you can get so much right now. If you haven't sold him to this point, now's a really good time. He's still struggling to complete passes accurately, and that's a signal I'm listening to. But I'm really rooting for the player, so I hope this keeps going, don't get me wrong. But for the rest of the season, I think it's Stafford, Fields, Goff. That's the order I would start them in. Like, Fields still feels pretty up and down week to week.
Yeah, I still think for this season it's Fields.
Yeah, you might be right. No.
And then it's
That's
kind of a push.
sharper.
I think you're looking at somewhere between quarterback 10 and 14 for Goff and Stafford. So
yeah, Goff's obviously
whatever. But I know we're like half an hour behind, which is actually ahead for us. But can I like? I've been sitting on this, and Peter, maybe we need to do a show or something. And it has to do with Fields because it's the fantasy football and real football are not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so in fantasy football, Fields is fantastic. Because he runs a lot. He doesn't have to complete passes. When he does complete passes, all of a sudden you have this huge game where you're winning a week. And so even though we treat fantasy football as a proxy for real football, it's not the same. Most fantasy scoring systems discount real world value of completing passes, of moving the chains, that football, like, and rushing gets overvalued. And so the players like Fields have this huge value in fantasy, even though they may not stick around for long.
The Blake Bortles effect. Right.
Yeah, well, but not even Bortles. Like, yes, Bortles, but Fields is this entirely different. Yeah, Fields is this entirely different. Like, Fields can run for 700-800 yards in a season, and all of a sudden he's top 5, and the Bears can still go 3-14 or 3-13 or whatever. It's not. And it's the reason why we pushed up Anthony Richardson. It's the reason why we pushed up Trey Lance. It's the reason why we pushed up Malik Willis. Yeah, but we're looking at players like Josh Allen. We're looking at players like Lamar Jackson, who, if you actually dig into what they've done in the NFL, they've completed passes at a much higher rate than these other. So they're not the same. They're not the same thing. And so it's about the longevity for real football. Mm-hmm. To me, the running quarterbacks without the ability to throw the ball consistently, all of a sudden, I'm playing that a little bit like running back, where it's not a long-term proposition. Like, usually you think about dynasty quarterbacks as, all right, I'm gonna have this guy for 10 years. Well, first of all, you're not anyway, but hopefully. even if you could have a player for 10 years, some of these quarterbacks are not 10-year quarterbacks. Some of these quarterbacks are 2 or 3 or 4, burn really bright, and the team realizes that they're not going to get them to where they need to be, and then we're moving on. And so I think we have to kind of look at that. And then the other piece of this is, and this is something, Peter, that you talked about a little bit with Russ and I in a DM, that Josh Allen, I mean, not Josh Allen, that Lamar Jackson's value right now is much lower than his production, because people are worried about what happens when he doesn't run anymore, without looking at the fact that he's been a really consistent better than average passer, could probably sustain more volume because of his efficiency. Although that's not how that works, but like but his value is crashing because he's a running quarterback, and because people see him as a running quarterback. And now all of a sudden we're worried about running quarterbacks. Trey Lance washed out. What's going on with Fields? Even though Lamar Jackson's an entirely different, to me, subset of quarterback, he's in an echelon above those players. So it's just this weird, like,
but I think it shows up that I've been talking about it a slightly different way, but it's the same problem. I think passing quarterbacks are underrated in fantasy for that reason. The fact you can trade in Trevor Lawrence right now, like we've seen on some of these trades last night, I think is partly because of that same issue. It's the fact that people are less certain about Sam Howell, less certain about Brock Purdy, because they don't have that rushing as part of their profile. It's the fact that CJ Stroud was actually the best pick this year, but he was diminished because, he's not much of a rusher and la, 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 la. And so it depends. The edge shows up in different ways, but I also think, to your point, you can take advantage of the short-term rushing QB, if you like, while valuing in a different category Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, because they're longer-term rushing quarterbacks. But then they've also got these passing quarterbacks that still have the ceiling if they're as good as, they have to be really, really freaking good. Yeah. But so, to be fair, to be Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, you have to be really, really freaking good to not be a short-term proposition as well. I think you don't have any short-term passing quarterbacks. The Jimmy G's of the world are also going to be replacement points, but you don't have that ceiling with them. Whereas the rushers, you have the ceiling with them and they're shorter term. And so that's a different category itself. But yeah, I think you're right. There's a whole, that one issue. I think it's why Sam Howell fell in the draft. The NFL is obsessed with it right now. Yeah. They want the rushers. So you can take advantage of it in a different way. One, take advantage, but try to find ways to better improve your team fairly by keeping it in mind in several different ways. And right now, one of the ones that stick out to me is not the disquiet, but the lack of hype around passing quarterbacks. Joe Burrow just got back to being Joe Burrow, but I think a number of things contribute to it in the diaspora or the underlying thought process of Dynasty where, Patrick Mahomes is scoring slightly less than we're typically used to this year. Not that he's part of this, but I think that adds into Joe Burrow going off to a slow start and Trevor Lawrence still being good, but not, putting up 40 points every week. And so that all adds to it as well. The passes just have we have less excitement on them, but they still have the ceiling. Again, as several of them are showing this year. So yeah, I think you can take advantage of it a whole bunch of different ways. And it's a really important area in Dynasty right now because of all those different areas that you can fairly try to use. I'm trying to get away from using the word exploit because that feels like someone else is making a mistake. When to your point, they're not. If you go get a Jordan Love or Justin Fields right now as points getters, makes perfect sense. Go win, but you have to be doing it with the right direction in mind. This is a short-term play. This is a long-term play. I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to go all like crossroads on you, but it's
I like talking about fantasy football.
I've been wanting to have this discussion for 2 weeks now, and
we should do podcasts or something so we can do that kind of thing. That'd be a good
fantastic idea. I'm going to write that down.